I discovered a peephole above my bed and realized someone had been watching me. I'm publishing this as a warning. If any of this sounds alarmingly familiar, I encourage you to read on. As a side note, I won't be giving more than one warning. If you know anything about the peephole, stay away from me. It wasn't the sound of distant thunder that woke me up yesterday morning. No, it was the gentle tap 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 of rain trickling down my forehead that caused my eyelids to slightly flutter open. The sensation was a little too delicate to wake me up completely, so I briefly lingered in a state of drowsy half-sleep. Before long, though, a cold droplet unexpectedly splashed onto my left eye, exorcising any remaining grogginess and jolting me fully awake. I shot up in bed. Judging by the lifting twilight outside my window, it was still early morning. Dark clouds hung ominously over the horizon. It looked like a nasty storm was rolling through, but that didn't explain how the precipitation had made its way inside. Just then, a faint beam of light appeared, cast down from somewhere up above. It fell from my bedroom's ceiling and landed on my pillow, exactly where my head had been a few moments prior. The spotlight was small and rounded, its diameter no larger than a quarter. My gaze traveled up the beam until I saw what I was looking for, a perfect circular hole in my roof. The clouds over my home had parted, allowing a ray of sunlight to find its way through the opening. I rubbed sleep from my eyes and looked again, assuming I was seeing something that wasn't actually there. But as my vision refocused, the hole became clearer. It was entirely too symmetric to have occurred naturally, like a cookie cutter had been used to create it. If I didn't know any better, I'd say it looked like a peephole. But that implied that someone was scaling my home in the middle of the night, silently watching me sleep by placing one eye over the tiny hole, only to climb back down before I woke up in the morning. As the hair on the back of my neck started to rise, fear swelling in my chest, I suppressed the idea. Logically, it was absurd. Why would anyone do that? I mean, what would be the point? How could I have never noticed? The meds do make me a pretty deep sleeper, I thought. Sleep has been a big issue for me my whole life. No matter how much I get, I never wake up rested. When I was a kid, my parents were concerned about how it was affecting my performance at school, but I was much more fixated on the recurring nightmares. Every night, without fail, I'd dream of the skidder. It would start with me floating in the air like a spirit. Sometimes I'd be outside, sometimes I'd be in a house I didn't recognize, but it'd always be in the dead of night. Before long, I'd see it below me, a long, slender shadow, flat and motionless on the ground like the outline of a fire hose. No matter how dark it was, I'd still be able to discern its shape. Its blackness was so much deeper, so much emptier than normal darkness, that it would give the long shadow contrast, the silhouette of a demon, impossibly framed by a lightless night. After I witnessed the shadow move and eat for the first time, I named it the skidder. I'd hover a few feet over the creature, unable to fly away, when someone would appear. It was different every time, and it didn't matter who they were. Could be a mother walking home from a graveyard shift, an elderly man entering his bathroom, a child walking down the stairs on their way to get a midnight snack. The skidder took them all the same. They'd looked in its direction but never could see it like I could. Once they had their backs turned, thousands of writhing legs would jut out of the skidder's two-dimensional body. The appendages would feverishly squirm, silently propelling it forward like a hellish centipede. When it was under its prey's feet, they would fall through the floor and into the skidder. I watched helplessly as their distorted, flattened bodies slid down the length of its shadow, faces stretched and contorted into expressions of impossible pain and terror. Then I'd wake up and it'd be morning. My parents took me to a neurologist. After I saw them, I had to see a bunch more doctors, endured plenty of odd high-tech tests. Eventually, I was diagnosed with a type of epilepsy that only occurs during sleep. The next day, I started some before-bed anti-seizure medications. I still never felt rested, but I went decades without dreaming of the skidder. That was good enough for me. For a few days last year, right after I moved into my current home, the nightmares returned. But before I could even make an appointment with a new sleep doctor, they abruptly went away. In retrospect, I now know why they went away. Someone installed the peephole. Once I had some breakfast in me, I walked over to my neighbor's house to ask if I could borrow a ladder. I found Andrew working under his car in the garage. Even though I did my best to announce my entrance softly, the man still nearly jumped out of his own skin, smashing his skull into the undercarriage of his sedan, as the words "Morning Andrew" escaped from my lips. After emitting a loud groan of pain, he carefully slid his body out and stood up. Morning, Pete," he said, rubbing the soon-to-be welt on the top of his head. "Sorry, bud. Didn't mean to startle you. Could I borrow a ladder? There's a leak somewhere in my roof." He paused for a moment, fiercely contemplating his reply like I had asked him the meaning of life. "Don't think I have one, actually. You think the leak could wait? I can bring one home from work later this week." From my vantage point, I could see the top two stairs of a wooden ladder peeking out from behind a large metal cabinet, only 5 feet behind him. Nodding my head in the ladder's direction, I responded, "You sure you don't have one?" Andrew reluctantly turned around, forcing a chuckle once he saw the tips of the ladder as well. "Right, forgot about that one. Yeah, I guess that's fine." With the ladder held under my armpit, I began walking back onto my side of the lawn. When I reached the halfway point, I realized I hadn't thanked Andrew. His behavior was so awkward that I had forgotten my manners. I turned around and shouted, "Thanks, buddy. I'll have it back as soon as I patch the leak." But I don't believe he heard me. My neighbor was now at the back of his garage on a call with someone, talking low but gesturing the hand that wasn't holding his phone with urgency. Something about his behavior was completely off. As I placed the ladder against the side of my house, I noticed something else too. I could have sworn my neighbor across the street was observing me behind a curtained window on the second floor of their house, but ducked their head away when I saw them. The peephole was significantly more disturbing up close. I could lie down on my stomach with one eye looking through it comfortably, and it had a perfect view of where I slept. My imagination drifted to the thought of me in bed while someone spied on my sleeping body from a secret hole in my roof, and it caused a violent chill to radiate down my neck. It wasn't a new renovation either. I found evidence that whoever made the hole did not make it recently. There was a piece of black tarp large enough to cover the orifice hanging by a nail aside from it. Upon closer inspection, I discovered 3 smaller holes around the peephole's perimeter in the shape of a square, their insides corrugated to show other nails had been there at some point. The one nail, almost dislodged, clung to the tarp by a thread. Rust coated the head, indicating that it had been there quite a while. As I pulled the nail out, the purpose of the tarp became clear. Whoever made the peephole nailed it over the gap before they left in the early morning. That way, I wouldn't be able to tell it was there during the day by sunlight shining through. The storm this morning, however, must have pulled it loose. I pocketed the sliver of tarp and returned the ladder to Andrew. Before I went to bed that night, I used it to cover the peephole from the inside. I also locked my bedroom door and put my wardrobe in front of it as a barricade, leaned my large bookcase against the window, blocking that potential entrance as well. Against my expectations, I did not sleep soundly, but I woke up feeling rested. The dream last night was the most vivid I've had in recent memory. It started with me lying motionless on some hallway floor, my back to the ground so I'm staring up at the ceiling. I want to get up because I'm intensely hungry, but I know that it's not time yet. Somewhere down the hallway, I can feel someone looking at me, even if they can't actually see me. I have to wait until they aren't looking at me. The soft thumping of footsteps began coming down the hallway towards me. A foot lands on what should be my face, but it doesn't hurt. In fact, it doesn't feel like anything at all. Once I can see his back, I push as hard as I can, causing sharp pains all throughout my body. But with the pain, I know I can move again. It feels like I have 1,000 fingers and they're all silently tapping against the wood tile as I furiously sprint. When I'm under him, I dislocate my jaw and he falls through me. I see his face for a split second as he drops into my gullet. It's Andrew. I woke up with Andrew's phone on my nightstand this morning. There was a notification for a new email. I'm unable to open the device without his password, but I can still read the title of the correspondence. May have found out about suppressive observation hole. Containment. I figured I'd experience a certain horror after truly experiencing my nighttime metamorphosis, but that feeling is blunted by another sensation. Finally, I feel rested and full. Whoever Andrew was and whatever institution he represents, they've prevented that feeling. I'm convinced the meds I've been taking are sedatives, not anti-seizure medications. They want me sleeping soundly so I don't wake up when they climb up the side of my house. They've been watching me at night, so when I change, I'm unable to move. They might have been doing it when I was a kid too. Maybe they told my parents, maybe they didn't. Andrew was home last night, so maybe he wasn't the actual watcher. Maybe he was more of a coordinator, or maybe the whole neighborhood takes shifts. In the end, it doesn't matter who he was. All that matters is that you take heed. If any of this sounds familiar, if you think you may be part of that same institution as Andrew was, this is your only warning. I do not plan on ever feeling empty again. As for Andrew, he's still here, alive within me, dissolving slowly. I still have plenty of room if you're looking to keep him company, but if you're smart, you'll just stay away.